Hi, this is the Critical Advocate, and today's review is for a horror slash thriller film called Barbarian. The film is directed by Zach Cregger and stars Georgina Campbell as Tess Marshall, a woman who travels to Detroit for a job interview. She books an Airbnb in a strange house in a very weird looking neighborhood, and when she arrives at the house on a rainy night, she realizes that the house was double booked by a stranger by the name Keith Tushko, played by Bill Skarsgård. So with nowhere to go, she decides to spend the night sharing the house with Keith, who appears to be too friendly. Then a sequence of creepy, shocking, and bizarre events soon follow, which leads her to unravel a very unsettling secret about the house. I don't want to spoil the plot of the film for you because the twists and revelations are effective and quite unsettling, so I will be keeping it a little vague. Disclaimer: the film does not hold back from its R rating, so if you are squeamish and are afraid of a little violence and nudity, well then this film might put you off. Additionally, the film does not shy away from certain sensitive topics, either which might be triggering for certain people, especially who have experienced any sexual violence or sexual abuse in their lives. It does tap into those disturbing themes and really shocks you. Okay, maybe I'm taking this a bit too far. Yes, the film is violent, but rest assured that there are films way worse than this. What I like about Barbarian is that it tries to the best possible extent to be as subtle as possible about the grotesque nature of some things that happen in the film, which does not for the most part feel distasteful. Well, in my opinion at least. The film does a great job with its unorthodox style of storytelling. It pulls a Pulp Fiction on you, in the sense that you might be following certain characters, but the story would cut away for a while to a completely brand new set of characters during the course of the film. The character of Tess is the lead in this film, and she is a well written character overall, who although succumbs to some horror cliches, which we are very familiar with, but for the most part comes off very believable and intelligent because she is self aware of the dangers she might be getting into, but tries to show heart and resilience, which makes her instantly very likable. I do enjoy characters which are written so as to not insult the audience. There were moments where she said the exact same thing I was thinking. So it's nice to see characters that call out some of the bullshit that horror movies force upon you. Justin Long is also in the film as A.J. Gilbert, a sitcom actor. He was a huge surprise. This is not his first horror film, as we've seen him in other films such as Jeepers Creepers and Drag Me to Hell, both of which I also thoroughly enjoyed. He always manages to come off as a disarming and likable character, despite some of his flaws. The Barbarian has some great cinematography. The camera follows characters through corridors and rooms in seamless fashion, creating a sense of claustrophobia yet spaciousness at the same time. It focuses on expressions and conversations in close-up shots with a lot of care, allowing you to read the facial expressions well. The music is subtle but does brilliant work to enhance the tense moments, making the edge of your seat anxiety all the more anxious and suspenseful. There is something very cool about how the darkest of the scenes in the film are shot in the most balanced way, in a way in which the light illuminates enough to understand what is happening. The imagery on display as a result is unsettling and scary. Although the film might not have the most original plot, but it is a breath of fresh air because we haven't seen something like this in a while. It really does take me back to the horror films released between 2000 and 2010. And by all means, it is a compliment. It manages to amplify the suspense in a very clever way through dialogue and intelligent characters, which raises it from being a B-movie horror film, when it could have easily been that. There is some dark humor here and there, which was also welcome to see, especially because it didn't break the immersion. Rather, they contributed to the WTF moments. Is Barbarian a perfect film though? Unfortunately, not entirely. Let's bring out the guilt counter. Remember when I compared the film to Pulp Fiction in the way it tells its story? When by taking a step away from some characters, it starts telling a story from a different character's perspective. And I said I welcome that type of storytelling. Well, I do. However, only when the original plot thread is supplanted or replaced by something at least equally or a more exciting story. Again, there is not much to dislike about the characters we are supplanted with for a short while, but in my case, it broke the immersion, especially when the story arc of the characters we leave off with ends in a very shocking way. In the downtime of being introduced to a new character, the film loses some of its momentum and steam and focuses on a character's backstory for which I am not entirely sure if it even required so much screen time. In particular, where AJ, Justin Long's character, is in a bar having an awkward conversation with a buddy of his. I was like, can we just move on from this already? But the movie eventually picks up once again as soon as all the characters converge and their story arcs meet. And that's when the movie starts moving fast. At number 2, we have some dumb characters. Again, remember when I said the film has some very intelligent and smart characters? Well, Tess is a smart character, for sure, but some are just dumb. In particular, there is a duo of police officers which, for no reason but to extend the trials and tribulations of Tess, just act in a very idiotic way. It really shows the discrepancy between the main characters who are intelligent and aware of what is going on, in contrast to these two characters which essentially are not written very well. At number 3, we have a weaker third act. I do have some problems with the third act. The film seemed like it struggled to find a convenient end, and there is one scene in particular that kind of broke my immersion altogether. I was like, that was a bit goofy. I'll speak more on this in the spoiler section, for which I'll leave a timestamp below. Look, Barbarian is a great film, which has plenty of suspense, some dark humor sprinkled in some instances, and has a great twist and scares that deliver on its advertised horror/thriller genre moniker. It is a great callback to some of the 2000s horror films like The Hills Have Eyes. With that said, the final verdict for Barbarian is a solid not guilty with a score of 7 out of 10. I wanted to give it an 8, but some of the aspects of the film, like for example the third act, bring it down, so that's why it comes down to a 7. Having said that, you need to check out Barbarian if you're a fan of horror films. That's it for now. If you want to stay for the spoiler section, I'll leave the timestamp below. This wraps up our case. This was The Critical Advocate, an advocate by day and a critic by night. Till next time, Svidanya, Hudafiz, and bye-bye. So Tess, the character that is the lead of the film, ends up booking an Airbnb with Keith, who upon Tess's arrival at the house is already there. The film really does sell the fact that Keith might be a creepy fella who is there with ill intentions. Tess is apprehensive of the fact that she might have to stay with the night with a complete stranger, and rightfully so. She wants to leave, but Keith convinces her to stay as it's dark outside and raining. Tess reluctantly stays in as Keith tells her that he is ready to sleep on the couch like a gentleman while she could take the room. Now from here on out, it is a guessing game. Is Keith a good guy or a creep? Well, the movie does a great job of creating tension as Keith offers her various kinds of beverages. First, it is tea, and then he opens up a bottle of wine and wants to share it with Tess. But Tess is still reluctant, and so she refuses every offer. It is later when the characters start conversing that you realize that maybe Keith is not such a bad guy. Tess is impressed when Keith tells her that he has seen the work the filmmaker she intends to work for has made. The night ends unceremoniously as they go to sleep. Tess goes into the room while Keith sleeps on the couch. At night, however, strange things start to happen. The door of her room opens and she feels someone is staring at her from the back. When she wakes up, looks around her shoulder, there is no one there. Keith is having a nightmare, so she wakes him, which startles him. The next morning, Tess leaves the house and realizes that the neighborhood is extremely creepy. All the houses she didn't clearly see at night appear to be abandoned for blocks on end, and only the Airbnb house is pristine. Tess goes for the job interview, which goes well. When Tess goes back to the house, there is a strange hobo that runs after her, screaming at her while she desperately runs into the house. Spooked and unsettled, she calls the cops, but they are preoccupied, apparently. She starts exploring the house for some tissue paper after she goes to the shitter. She finds some in the basement, but the door to the basement conveniently shuts behind her. After exploring a little bit and trying to get out of the basement, she finds a rope attached to a wall. She pulls on it, and a door opens. It is a secret room apparently in the house. This part was a bit shocking. She goes inside to find a room that has a creepy looking bed and a camera on a tripod stand facing the bed. This spooks and scares the shit out of her. She desperately tries to get out. Keith returns home at this point, at which point he starts to convince her to unpack as he will go down and investigate. She decides to keep watch as he goes down. However, after a while, Keith does not return. So Tess, the horror cliches of all horror films. She follows and goes down to find him. When she doesn't find him in the room, with the bed and the dirty bed and the tripod stand, she finds another entrance, a double entrance. She opens it and realizes there are stairs that lead to a dark and gloomy tunnel. She goes down the tunnel and realizes that there is somebody who's been living here for the past how many years, and somebody must have built this tunnel. And that is very, very creepy at this point. She finds some cages, and she starts following the voice of Keith calling out to her. She finds them, but he's crawling on his four legs, and he starts telling Tess that we need to get out, we need to get out. See, up until this point in the film, you're still thinking that maybe Keith is the guy who orchestrated this Airbnb error. Even I was like, he's trying to lure you in, as he screams at her that he will not go back the same way. He claims that something bit him, and out of nowhere from behind, a tall, sparse, long-haired, naked woman appears and bashes his skull against the wall. This really bummed me out. Keith was awesome. Look, I like Bill Skarsgård, he's super talented and was awesome as long as he lasted. As for Tess, we don't really know what happened to her. The film cuts away Justin Long, a sitcom actor who gets a call from his agent that a certain co-star is accusing him of rape, and in desperation starts to collect money to file a lawsuit in defamation against her. His investment management agent tells him to sell his house in Detroit, which, you guessed it, is the same house Tess and Keith were Airbnb-ing. Yeah, a coincidence. He travels to Detroit and goes to his house. AJ realizes that someone has been staying there. He discovers a door leading to the caverns in the basement, and he gets excited. He starts measuring up the place with a measuring tape, whilst also googling about whether basement portions could increase the value of the house. He gets captured by the woman and thrown into the cage, where we find Tess alive, who explains that the woman they refer to as the mother wants them to act as her children. Funny and yet disgusting scene which followed, where the naked, deformed woman offers AJ to drink milk. It is hilarious because we see some hair on the milk bottle and he is visibly disgusted, and Tess shows him how it's done, so she starts drinking on it because she obviously wants to stay alive. The mother offers AJ milk again, but he refuses to drink, so she drags him away and forces him to breastfeed. It's very hilarious how she's forcing him with her breast, and he's disgusted and he's trying to fight her and not drink from the breast. It's insanity. That's what I mean when I said that there is some dark humor in this film. So Tess escapes the house by breaking a basement window. She eventually reaches a gas station and is able to call the police. So this right here is where I was getting annoyed, because the officers are dismissive of her story. Although she manages to convince them to go back to the house with her, but then they refuse to investigate the house before being called away. Like, what the hell, dude? Do your job, damn it. It really made them seem one-dimensional and dumb. A flashback then occurs where we see a character named Frank going about his day and stalking women. And that's where we realize that Frank is the guy who owned the house previously and had built these tunnels where he kept these captive women and raped them. Because AJ goes into another room inside the tunnels where he finds an old Frank lying down in the bed. And that's where he thinks that maybe Frank is a captive of the mother as well. But he soon realizes, after looking at some of the cassettes, that Frank is the guy who was the one who captured these women. He raped them and had children with them. And then he raped those children as well. And this mother character, this deformed woman, is his grandchild or concoction of many inbred women. So the mother is essentially a multi-generational incestual result of Frank's violent actions conducting rape upon these women. Somehow then AJ and Tess escape and they go on top of a water tower, at which point the mother follows them. And this was a bit of a goofy and hilarious scene where basically AJ, being a coward, pushes Tess away and throws her down the water tower. And the mother, like 007 James Bond, jumps after her and like catches her and then falls down, like breaking her fall, and she basically dies apparently, but Tess survives. So AJ comes down realizing what has happened, and he tries to convince Tess that, oh, I didn't mean to kill you, I was so scared, I would have gotten killed if I didn't do that to you, and I knew this was going to happen because I knew she was going to save you. But then eventually we realize that the freak mother, she wakes up and is not hurt by that fall, and she basically gouges his eyes out and kills him. That's when she's like, bah, bah, to Tess, and Tess just takes a gun and holds it to her face and then pulls the trigger and kills the mother. And that's how the film ends. So basically, you realize the only monster was Frank. The mother herself, she is not a monster, or she's not evil inherently. She's just a victim of Frank, the asshole, the same guy who cowardly kills himself earlier on in front of AJ, who raped these women, and through multi-generational inbred incestual relationships with them, with his kids, with his grandchildren, she was the creation of all of that mess. So she wanted to call something her own, and that's why she used to kidnap these people and call them her kind of wanted to belong somewhere, essentially. So Barbarian is a nice film. Overall, I liked the shock factor that it brought, and it was a breath of fresh air. Having said that, this ends our spoiler section review. Thank you so much for watching and sticking around. This was The Critical Advocate, an advocate by day and a critic by night. Till next time, Visvidanya, Khudafis, and bye-bye.